we do have Dan Jeavons, VP Computational Science and Digital Innovation and IT CTO from Shell, joining us and connecting with us live directly. So could we please see Dan on the screens, please, and hear some very worthwhile thoughts therein as well. With a round of cheer, please, ladies and gentlemen.
So thank you, Shikha, and thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be joining you. I do apologize that I can't be there in person. I really wanted to be, but I'm in the process of relocating to Bangalore, and as a result, I'm kind of in transit at the point at which this conference is being held. But thank you for having us. And I want to talk today about a topic that's really close to my heart, which is becoming a truly data-driven organization, and thinking about how you really empower a community through data democratization to accelerate transformation. Maybe to start, at Shell, of course, we are in the midst of two transformations, which are disrupting our business and transforming the way in which we operate. We're living in a time of unprecedented change, and for us, that involves looking at energy transition, the need to move towards a lower carbon energy system, and also, of course, alongside that, the need to transform our business through digital technology. We've set some very bold ambitions as Shell. We want to be a net zero company by 2050 or sooner, and we want to reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 50% by 2030. These are bold and ambitious goals that are really going to radically transform the energy system as we know it and the business that we operate in Shell. And of course, key to achieving those ambitions is really data and digital technology. We believe that data and digital are two of the easier levers to pull. If you think about transforming the energy system, you have to recognize that this is going to take time because the energy system is vast. It takes large capital investments to change. But of course, in digital technology, we have the opportunity to leverage that to make the existing business more effective and efficient, and also to speed up the design of the future energy system, and of course, to enable a more effective operating of the energy system, a system which is inevitably going to be more distributed, more complex, and more diverse in the future. And so in all of those areas, digital technology is going to play a critical role. And a recent report, which was put together by Accenture and the World Economic Forum, estimated that digital technology deployed at scale has the ability to reduce global CO2 emissions by as much as 20%. Now, whether or not you accept that number is up for debate, but certainly digital technology is one of the key levers that we can pull to accelerate the path to net zero, and it's one of the easier levers to pull because it can have a much more immediate impact. So for us, digital transformation is absolutely an imperative. It's something that we have to do if we want to be able to hit our targets and to meet our lower carbon ambitions. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to move in that direction? Well, I think the first thing is that we need to be able to focus on a variety of different initiatives which are going to take us towards that net zero goal. It's about focusing both on our existing emissions, our scope 1 and 2 emissions. We are committed to trying to increase the efficiency of what we deliver today. And as I mentioned there, we have a key opportunity from digital technology. And of course, underpinning those scope 1 and 2 emissions, we have a vast array of data that is accessible to us, but often not integrated and not always usable to help us to understand what's really going on. We've struggled for a long time with having a very distributed business from a data landscape perspective. We run assets all over the world. We have businesses in many, many different countries. We run everything from retail stations through to energy and chemicals parks, which are our emerging refineries, through to upstream assets that produce oil and gas, through to, of course, an increasing portfolio of things like wind turbines and solar parks, which are critical assets for our future business. All of these things are in different locations, and historically, all of these things have been very separately managed from a data perspective. Now, one of the things we've been doing as Shell is moving towards a much more integrated data landscape and putting in place, if you like, the data foundations, which can make that data more accessible, more democratized, but also enable us to gain much greater insight into what's happening in terms of CO2 emissions, and to create opportunities to run our business more effectively. And to do that, we've been putting in place a common data foundation, in particular, focusing on time series data. And today, we have around 2.7 trillion rows of data aggregated in an integrated way into a global lakehouse architecture, which is really forming the foundation of a lot of the projects that we're running. So what does that mean? Let me just unpack that a little bit for those that aren't fully familiar with what we mean by a lakehouse architecture. What we're trying to do is create a common data fabric that underpins the integrated data sets for these large-scale data assets that we're pulling together, that allows us to do both standard reporting, so typical insight generation, SQL queries, if you will, on a consistent environment, but also to use the same environment to train our machine learning. So historically, to do that, we had to rely on various data warehouses as well as various data lakes. And by bringing that into a common enterprise framework, we are able to create a much more simple interface, which can accelerate the democratization of data and making that much more accessible. And these sorts of platforms are really fundamental, and they're enabling us to do all sorts of things that previously we've really struggled with. For example, we're now able to start to generate machine learning models on many, many pieces of equipment across our organization from a single integrated common platform. And this can help us to understand when these pieces of equipment are likely to fail. We can identify issues before they arise. And we're doing this now for north of 10,000 pieces of equipment across our global business. And we're monitoring that from a central location where we're able to automatically generate alerts and provide those back to the operators in the field for further investigation. And we've seen significant impact in terms of the ability to prevent unwanted issues with those pieces of equipment. Similarly, we can also use this to do new levels of optimization. We can look at the whole operating process of a particular facility, for example, things like an LNG train, and we can identify ways in which that process can be optimized. And that can have an impact both in terms of economic return, in terms of production volumes, but perhaps more importantly, it can start to help us to optimize the level of CO2 that's associated with that process. A recent project showed that we were able to reduce the CO2 emissions by as much as 130 kilotons, simply by optimizing the way in which that process was configured. To put that in perspective for you, that's about the equivalent of removing 50,000 vehicles, European vehicles, from the road, simply by optimizing that industrial process. And so by bringing this data together, by aggregating it in an integrated way, we're able to start to drive these sorts of improvements across our business and to be able to deploy digital products at scale that can move the needle in terms of our ambitions. But it goes beyond that. It's not simply about integrating data and developing platforms. I get very excited about that, and that, of course, is very, very important. But it's also about how you leverage the integrated ecosystem that surrounds you. For us, we recognize that whilst we have deep expertise in the energy sector, we can't go alone. We need to be able to partner with others in order to accelerate our digital transformation and to go at the speed that we believe is required in order to achieve our net zero ambitions. We're working in open ecosystems, looking at things like developing open source data platforms through consortiums like the OSDU that can help us to understand in a much more integrated fashion the data that's flowing across our business. We're also partnering with software companies and operators to develop something which we call the Open AI Energy Initiative, which is about trying to bring together a digital ecosystem that can act in an interoperable fashion to accelerate our progress. These are just some examples. There are many others across our organization, but it's that ability to operate at scale that helps us to accelerate by leveraging what others have. And just to expand on that a little bit, the key thing here is recognizing what we're good at. We are good at developing algorithms and solutions that help to transform the energy system from a digital perspective, but to deploy that in a scalable software platform, to integrate that in a usable user interface, to manage that at scale. These are skills where others have already developed solutions which can help us to do this much more quickly. And so it's about being clear on what we bring, but also relying on the skills and capabilities that others bring to accelerate our progress. But doing that in a way where we're all aligned to a common ambition, which in this case is accelerating Shell's digital progress in order to achieve our net zero ambitions. So it's an exciting time, and this is already helping us. We've seen, for example, the ability to bring together AI solutions with a digital twin, with also an integrated data platform, all enabled by our partners, that in turn is helping us to accelerate and speed up the deployment of machine learning at scale across our organization. So ecosystems are really important. But as I head towards the end of my presentation, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk about the importance of empowering the front line and in building the right culture. A few years ago, we started an initiative which we called Sheldon Ai. And Sheldon Ai was all about trying to spark a change program from the grassroots, which could accelerate the adoption of AI at scale across Shell. It started as a small network of a couple of hundred people, and it's grown now to a community that's well over 5,000 individuals. And this is people right across our organization, not just data scientists, of which we have many, and also AI engineers, but also people in the business, managers, operators, inspectors, people who are in the front line whose roles are being impacted by AI. And what we want to do is create the right dialogue in which they can understand the potential of what this can do for them, but also that we're informed by what they need and the real problems that they need solving from the AI community. And that creates if you like, a positive cycle, which can ultimately accelerate the embedment of these solutions into the organization. And of course, helps with the adoption of these solutions by the people that need to be using them every day. And so that community has played a key role in transforming the organization. But we've gone beyond that too. We're now working on the ability to also enable that community with low-code tools, which enables them to solve their own problems without having to constantly rely on data scientists. That doesn't mean we don't need a data science capability. Of course, that's a crucial community. We use that for many sophisticated research projects, high-end delivery projects, which are going to focus on the bigger ticket items that really transform the way in which we work. But many problems don't require that central capability. They're local problems in specific locations with specific teams where simple data science solutions and simple applications can really accelerate the value add and the progress that those communities can make. And so what we're looking to do there is to enable folks with low-code, DIY, do-it-yourself tool sets, which enable them to make progress, to develop prototypes, and to show the value. And so we've deployed now these solutions to well over 1,400 individuals right across our organization, and that's scaling up all the time. We've got over 100 applications that have been developed in this space, which are being leveraged by the organization. And again, that number is constantly increasing. And these are simple applications that are solving local problems, but are really starting to empower the frontline workforce to make the change there and then and to show the value. And this has another benefit, which is many of these ideas are great ideas, and some of them have the potential to be relevant elsewhere. And so we're now looking to say, can we take those locally prototype value-adding solutions and look at how we scale them to further accelerate the benefits from digital technology right across our organization. Of course, underlying that, and most importantly in this context, we rely effectively on having that integrated data. And so just to go back to where I started, of course, these DIY tool sets are all connected to those common data environments. And what we want to do is enable that community to leverage those data sets in a simple, easy way, and then to build on top of that. And then that in turn accelerates the progress. So having the common data fabric enabled by a community, then on top of that, given the right tool sets to accelerate the transformation. So I've talked a lot about what we're trying to do. I've talked about the way in which we're setting it up. I've talked about the way in which we're empowering the community through common data fabrics. I talked about the tool sets that we're deploying on top of that. I think importantly though, what I didn't mention so far is culture. And culture for me is absolutely fundamental to what we've been trying to do at Shell. We need to create a community of digitally savvy energy professionals who are capable of driving this change. And it enables us, it's also important that we enable them through different ways of working. That's embedding things like agile approaches. It's also creating space where we can take more risk. We work in an industry where we try and minimize risk, and that's a really important trait because many of the things we do require a deep focus on safety, on asset integrity, and on trying to minimize the risk wherever we can. And we mustn't lose that. That culture is fundamental to so much of the business that we run today. But at the same time, when it comes to digital technology, it's often we need a more iterative, more agile, and more willing to fail and pivot type culture, which can be used in the right way with the right safeguards to accelerate our progress. And so what we're trying to do is infuse some of those elements into our culture whilst respecting the heritage that we come from. And it's often said that culture beats strategy any day. And I believe that's fundamentally true. This is not easy. Retaining the good, and there's many, many good things about Shell's culture, whilst infusing this growing digital community with the right mentality to accelerate our digital transformation is one of my big focus areas. And what we see is that it's exciting. It's exciting. This is really making a difference already. We've seen huge impact right across our organization. And we really feel we're on the transformation journey. But the final thing, and I'll leave it here, is that we must never stop learning. Having that ability to listen, to learn from those outside of Shell that can help us in the digital ecosystems that I mentioned, to learn from others who are trying to adopt this technology in the front line, that's perhaps the most important trait. And it's that learner mindset, I believe, that's going to help us to adapt and to change in the light of the forces that we face, the forces of energy transition and digital transformation. So thank you for having me. I hope that was a helpful set of reflections and hope to see you all again very soon.